I just recorded an entire N++ video where like 10 minutes in, my microphone disconnected. You're probably thinking, oh, this is a problem with the microphone. You gotta solve that problem with the microphone, because otherwise you're gonna have problems in future. Like, you just got this new mic, maybe there's some growing pains or whatever, like, I don't know. But I actually think it's different. I actually think what the problem is with the USB port, because I have two USB 3.0 ports on my computer, and I have zero USB-C, which is really a shame. It's really inconvenient, but it's just the way it is I have two USB 3.0. I had my keyboard plugged into one, and I recently plugged my microphone into the other because I think it was providing more power than the USB 2.0 ports. At least it appeared that I was getting better volume. Like, my mic wasn't as quiet when I was plugged into the USB 3.0. That's what it appeared to be to me. So I switched it. I was like, oh, this is great. So now it'll work. But then randomly in the video it disconnected, and I think it is the fault of the USB port. I think that USB port is faulty because I plugged my keyboard into it next and it also wasn't connecting as easily. Or maybe it's a problem with the wire. Like, I can replace a wire. I've got tons of USB to USB C wires, so like I could replace that. I just don't want to replace I just didn't want to replace my actual microphone again because I was happy with this one and the quality I was getting, and then it was just like, actually I'm going to disconnect on you randomly, and I can't be having that. Like, that is such a deal breaker to have a microphone that's not going to be reliable. And so now throughout this whole recording, I've been looking over at my second screen to check that my microphone's actually recording, and it seems like it is. Like, I'm not having a problem with it right now, which is good, but like, how reliable is that going to be? I don't know. So there's some growing pains, whatever. This is a like thing that I'm just gonna have to deal with, and I don't think it's going to continue to be a problem. I do think that it might just be the USB port that was the problem, and like, worst case, I can continue using the USB 2.0 ports. It wasn't that quiet. I'm already, like, on my previous mic I was already boosting the gain quite a bit, which is why you had like a lot of background noise. In the previous videos you could hear quite a decent amount of background noise whenever I was talking, because I was boosting the gain quite a bit. I'm not boosting it nearly as much with this, but I still think you can hear some background noise here and there, but it's fine. Like, I don't have a problem with you being able to hear the fact that I live in a place and occupy real space, right? Like, that, at the end of the day, background noise is just a sign that you're human, right? And I am human, which is why sometimes you can hear that there are things going on around me that exist independently from me. That doesn't seem like such a bad thing to me. Anyway, I spent the whole video not talking about my microphone because I was intending to just kind of move on from that whole saga now that the problem was solved, right? I spent the whole video talking about N++ and how, like, this game is quite fun, but it's quite different from Dustforce, which is the nearest point of comparison I feel as though I have for this game. Because I've played a lot of platformers, I've played quite a few platformers. This is a momentum-based platformer in the same way that like Waveland and Dustforce are. But this is kind of interesting because it has traditional Mario controls, but not traditional Mario physics. Like, I can run and I can jump, but that's it. There's nothing else. There's no bonus mechanic, there's no backflips, there's no dash, there's no wave landing. It's just running and jumping and wall jumping, and that's the game. And I thought it felt really interesting because I've never played a game like it. I've never played a game that goes full in on the momentum platformer business without having some kind of additional movement mechanics. But it kind of works. I mean, this game takes the kind of Mario approach where it's like, we're going to add level hazards and stuff that you can interact with, like springs, which are in this game, and also in Mario, which is what makes them a good point of comparison. We're going to take those things and we're going to turn those into our, movement mechanic for that level. And don't get me wrong, Celeste and Dust Force do this too. I mean, does Dust Force do it? Dust Force kind of does it, but like Celeste does it. Celeste obviously kind of a momentum plant. Momentum plant. Kind of a momentum platformer, but not in the same way as Dust Force or this. I would say it's less momentum and more precision, but they are both momentum platformers. I would say that Celeste does it as well, in that you have things that you interact with, such as the platforms in Chapter 1 that only activate when you touch them, or the things in the jungle in Chapter 6 where they only activate once you hit them with the dash, once you dash into them. There are things like that in Celeste. They are not... The primary movement mechanic is still the dash, right? In this game, your primary movement mechanic is jumping, which, every platformer kind of has jumping. I'm sure there are platformers that don't. Like, that wasn't meant to be a rule. It was just a general statement that platformers are games where you jump. Which is usually true, but I don't need examples of the contrary. Give me examples of the contrary, though. I don't know any off the top of my head. Platformers where you don't jump. So, as I'm sure they exist, feel free to share them, because that does sound like an interesting concept. I mean, it's just like, take the main thing of the genre and remove it, right? Like, if we did a shooter without guns, you would get a very boring melee game. I guess you would get Skyrim. Skyrim's a shooter without guns, which is not very boring, but it's also an RPG at the same time. I don't think that would work in, like, Doom without guns would probably not work as well as Skyrim does. So yeah, this is, we're talking about platformer without jump. That is like the Skyrim of platformers, I guess. It's kind of weird to say, like, Skyrim is out of place, because it is a role-playing game. Like, it's not... But then Fallout is a shooter, and Fallout is Skyrim with guns. And Skyrim is Fallout without guns. Well, Fallout 3 and forward. Obviously, the first two Fallout games are, like, not the same thing, which was always really confusing for me when I was a kid, because I'm like, well, why would they do that? Why would they still call it Fallout? But then I think about it, it's like, okay, technically they're both platformers, but there's not a lot in common. There's not a lot in common between Mario 3D games and Mario 2D games. They're both Mario, in the same way that all the Fallout games are still Fallout. They keep the post-apocalypse part intact, right? Like, that is the part that makes it Fallout above anything else. So yeah, sure, why not? Let's do that. Let's call it that. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I think I haven't cut out this whole video. I've been looking over at the mic the entire time on OBS, just making sure that it's still picking up my voice. So after this level, I'm gonna call it there, because I really don't want to have to trash another recording because of this issue, but I think it is good. I think it is solved now that I've plugged it into a different thing, and my keyboard is, like, operating fine under the USB 2.0 instead of 3.0, so it's not a big deal. Like, it's not a big change. See you later.